Hi, it's Scott Vogel on sex addiction. I'm going to share with you the 3 most common techniques for treating sex addiction. The road to recovery from sex addiction can seem for many people like a long and grueling journey, especially at the beginning of the recovery process. But with perseverance, strength, and lots of support, recovery is possible. The first technique for treating sex addiction is 12-step programs. 12-step programs are the most popular method and the cheapest way to get into recovery from sex addiction. Once you join a 12-step program and begin attending meetings, you'll start to get involved in working the 12 steps of recovery from sex addiction. There are different S fellowships, as they're called. The first one is SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, and they talk about the lust. In SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous, they talk about sexually addictive behavior. In SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, they talk about sex and love addictive behavior. And SCA, Sexual Compulsives Anonymous, they talk about sexual compulsive behavior and overcoming them. All of these groups offer support from people just like yourself who are struggling with some sort of addiction to a sexual behavior. The second technique, often used to treat sex addiction, is therapy. Many sex addicts probably have had some therapy in the past. Most will have had individual therapy and unfortunately didn't find it helpful in treating their addiction. The reason is simple. Not all therapists are certified to treat sex addiction. Therapists are educated, knowledgeable, but for sex addiction, it's best to find what's called a CSAT, a Certified Sex Addiction Therapist, somebody who has had extensive training and has to continue to attend conferences, seminars, and supervision in order to be up on the latest treatment for sexual addiction. Group therapy is also helpful as a treatment. You see, recovery through therapy takes time, and unfortunately most addicts don't want to hear that it could take 3, 4, 5 years in working with a certified sex addiction therapist. The process is going to include therapy about intimacy, trauma history, family issues, childhood issues, sexual education, and most importantly, time to establish abstinence. It is recommended that most therapists encourage sex addicts to attend 12-step programs like the ones mentioned earlier. Certified sex addiction therapists are also qualified to treat family members and partners of the sex addict. And they might ask the sex addict to allow them to disclose to family members what's happening in order to eliminate a lot of the secrets and lies and the shame that goes along with hiding a sex addiction. The third technique is medications. Medications are often used to treat many of the symptoms a sex addict's experiences, such as bipolar, depression, anxiety, mood disorders, and other mental health issues. Medications can be prescribed to help treat these conditions so the addict can better function in day-to-day living and work on their issues in therapy. SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, are a kind of antidepressant and are sometimes used to treat sex addiction because in some cases they lower the sexual urges and the libido. But unfortunately the effects are not always as dramatic as would be hoped for. SSRIs can be given to a patient if they're experiencing problems with keeping their sex drive under control. Medical treatments such as this are usually only used in conjunction with visits to certified doctors, psychiatrists, therapists, or social workers. In review of the 3 common techniques for treating sex addiction: 12 steps, SA, Sexaholics Anonymous; SAA, Sex Addicts Anonymous; SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous; and SCA, Sexual Compulsives Anonymous. Technique 2 is therapy, individual or group. And technique 3, we talked about medications to help with anxiety, depressions, and mood disorders. Visit our YouTube channel on sex addiction for more videos on sex addiction and recovery from sex addiction. Go to www.onsexaddiction.com for a free video explaining sex addiction, symptoms of sex addiction, recovery from sex addiction, as well as more information about sex addiction and sex addiction recovery.